is good, everyone? What is good? Welcome back to another video. Today we're jumping back into the Go Battle League arena. This time we are trying our luck once again with the single type or monotype cup. The team we're running today was suggested to me by a fellow content creator, a Twitch streamer at that, by the name of Top Streamer KR, and I'll drop a link to their Twitch stream in the video description down below. So the line we're running today is actually a triple normal line. And even though these Pokemon all have the same type, it's interesting because they do function very differently. We'll be rocking with Lickitung on the lead, which provides us with neutral matchups pretty much across the board, except for in matchups with other normal types and with dark types. In those instances, we'll be pivoting out into our Vigoroth. So Vigoroth is actually the safe swap on this team. Vigoroth has neutral plus matchups with a majority of the meta, except for with ghost types and with psychic types. Vigoroth's job on our team isn't necessarily always to flip switch, it's to do some chip damage and allow the Lickitung to come back in and lick down, the psychic or ghost type Pokemon that was drawn out by our Vigoroth. And then in the back, we have the GOAT, Wooloo. So our Wooloo moveset is actually Body Slam Wild Charge. I'm choosing to run Wild Charge because it hits almost as hard as Payback, 100 damage compared to 110 for Payback, while being exponentially cheaper. So 45 energy for Wild Charge compared to 60 energy for Payback. And not just that, in my game so far, I've found that Wild Charge has excellent play or coverage against pretty much the entirety of the meta. And you'll see how Wild Charge fares for us in these matches today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into some battles. Jumping straight into the first match, we have Lickitung on the lead against Seviper. This is a positive lead for us, although it is a close matchup because Seviper will be quickly debuffing our defenses with this incoming Poison Fang. I'm thinking the opponent might be Poison Fanging and dipping, but they're staying in, trying to catch a move onto their Umbreon as the opponent does pivot into their Dark type Pokemon. We counter swap into our Vigoroth, and this is a great matchup for us as Vigoroth will be dealing super effective counter damage. However, this Umbreon is extremely spammy, able to fire off 2 Foul Place, which will be getting our Vigoroth in the red, putting us in critical health range. Vigoroth returning in kind with its first Body Slam, getting the Umbreon very low. Now Umbreon also in the red as Vigoroth reaches another Body Slam. Will this Body Slam be enough to knock out the Umbreon? It is enough to get the KO onto the Dark Fox, as the opponent will now be bringing in their fighting type Pokemon. I believe this is a Machamp, and this might be problematic for us. However, Vigoroth is able to clutch it up and reach another Body Slam, firing that Body Slam into the opponent's Primeape. Primeape chooses to no shield, now at about 50% health, but will be respecting the next Body Slam from this Lickitung. Primeape looking to farm up energy, reaching the charge move. Lickitung will be respecting the damage, preserving its health by expending its first shield, and the opponent is able to successfully catch this Body Slam onto their Seviper while we swap into our double. This may have been a misplay as our double will now be permanently debuffed in its defense stat for the remainder of the game. However, double has reached the back-to-back Body Slams, which will be enough to knock out this Primeape as the first Body Slam will go shielded. However, Primeape not able to reach another charge move and is an extremely glassy Pokemon. We did run a Primeape line earlier in the season. It was so much fun, but we also have firsthand experience to the glassiness of this Pokemon as double calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have a positive lead with Lickitung on the lead against the opponent's Mewtwo. Opponent swaps into their Ampharos, and I am slow to swap here, unsure of how to play out this matchup. We end up swapping into our Vigoroth after the opponent has already almost reached 2 charge moves, as they will be firing the back-to-back Thunder Punches. We did respect the damage of this Shadow Ampharos by shielding the first Thunder Punch, but allowed the second one to go through before we fire off this Body Slam. The Ampharos goes down as the opponent pivots back into their Mewtwo. This Mewtwo is running Confusion, which generates energy a lot less quickly, but it puts out so much more damage than Psycho Cut, as the opponent is able to Confusion down our Vigoroth with this Shadow Mewtwo in the MonoType Cup. Big respect to the opponent. This is some serious spice, as Lickitung is able to reach this Body Slam, which is enough to knock out the opponent's Mewtwo. Opponent brings in their final Pokemon, and it is a Slurpuff. I absolutely love this Pokemon. Slurpuff is adorable. It's running Fairy Wind, has access to Play Rough as well as Flamethrower and Energy Ball. So it has great coverage moves, which gives it awesome play against the meta. But in this instance, although Slurpuff did have one shield, it was at a significant energy disadvantage against our Lickitung, as Slurpuff will be able to knock out this Lickitung, but is now in critical health range. As that Flamethrower KOs the Lickitung, we bring in our double, able to just about get to a Body Slam, but the opponent chooses to not delay the inevitable and calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have a terrible lead with our Lickitung aligned against the opponent's Umbreon. We pivot out into our safe swap Vigoroth, and we are met by the opponent's Charm Gramble. Charmers are a bit of an issue for this team, as we do have two Pokemon that run fighting type fast moves, meaning that we're going to be dealing minimal damage with our fast moves and therefore must be relying on our charge moves, which we are able to do, as we do get the Gramble extremely low in critical health range before it reaches the crunch to knock out our Vigoroth. At this point, Gramble is extremely low, so I can comfortably bring back in our Lickitung, lick down the opponent's Charmer before the opponent is able to bring back in their Umbreon, and we pivot immediately into our Double. Double will be met by this energy-rich Umbreon, and they're running Psychic. Okay, trainer, I see the spice a little bit. Psychic does give you excellent coverage against poison types. However, it is a non-stab move. So in this instance, if it is not doing super effective damage, you should be throwing foul plays, as the opponent pivots into their Politoed. Politoed able to reach this Weather Ball, but our double is very nearly at the back-to-back Wild Chargers. And here is the first example of how Wild Charge might be beneficial for us, as we are able to easily KO that Politoed through their one shield, reaching another charge move. It'll just be the Body Slam, as Umbreon is applying very minimal fast move pressure. We can easily get to another charge move on our double late game. Wanting to preserve that energy, I pivot back into my Lickitung, as Lickitung is extremely bulky and will take multiple charge moves for the opponent to knock us out. Lickitung able to reach a Body Slam, will be firing this off into the opponent and claiming their final shield. And at this point, this is pretty much a GG. Well played to the opponent, as we still do have two shields, and Lickitung will be able to just about knock out the opponent's Umbreon, expending our final shield before we lick down this Umbreon. So in this matchup, we were able to overcome a Charmer, which, like we talked about, is a little bit of an issue for this team. Vigoroth able to reach those Body Slams extremely quickly, which was very beneficial for us in that matchup, as Lickitung is able to call game. Well played by the opponent, and thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have a tough lead with our Lickitung aligned with the opponent's Psychic type Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet is able to easily win this matchup, as it is dealing super effective counter damages to our Lickitung and will be dealing respectable damage with its returns. Lickitung able to reach the back-to-back Body Slams, will begin firing off these charge moves into the opponent, but as you can see, Wobbuffet is extremely bulky, and these Body Slams are doing very minimal damage. So even though we are dealing super effective lick damage, it's not really starting to add up for us. Meanwhile, our Lickitung is just about in the critical health range, as this next charge move will be putting our Lickitung into farm down range for the opponent, as it is the Mirror Coat. Will we be able to get to another Body Slam? We are not, as our Lickitung gets farmed down. It gets countered down by a Wobbuffet. That is just not great. As we bring in our Vigoroth, our remaining two Pokemon do rely on fighting type fast moves, as that will not be beneficial for us. We are going for the farm down, but I realize our Vigoroth will be extremely low if we fully commit to that farm down. So that was a big misplay by me, as Vigoroth did get low, too low. I could have thrown the Body Slam early on to mitigate the amount of damage that our Vigoroth took. At this point, I stopped swiping the bubbles for whatever reason. I was talking to the chat, only got a great, which, as you'll see, it was kind of inconsequential. As we swap into our double will be aligned with this Alomomola, which is an extremely bulky Pokemon. Alomomola able to reach the Psychic, firing off the Psychic into our double as the opponent reveals their final Pokemon, and it is a Chansey. And at this point, I realize I'm more than likely not going to be able to win this game, but I definitely value my time too much to play it out. So respectfully, well played to the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle. That team is just, it's a stall team. It's not great. It's not great for your mental health. Don't do that to yourself, trainers, if you don't absolutely need the wins. But pivoting into the next match, we have our Vigoroth aligned against the opponent's safe swap of Kangaskhan. This Kangaskhan is not the best safe swap, as it will be taking super effective damage from our Vigoroth, and we're able to call the bait from the opponent. It's just a power-up punch, as we are able to farm down the opponent's Kangaskhan before the Hypno returns to the battlefield. As we do throw on alignment there, I mistimed my fast move as the opponent was able to sneak in a full 4-turn confusion. That is terrible play by me. I sincerely apologize, as this did likely turn the tide of my battle with the Hypno, because they were able to farm us down due to that free confusion that I gave them. We will be bringing back in our Lickitung, and I was telling my chat there's no way that this Hypno is running Focus Blast, right? But the Hypno is able to land the blast onto our Lickitung, which is horrible for us. The opponent pivots into their Nidorina as we swap into our final Pokemon, that being the Double. We call the bait here. It's more than likely always going to be the Poison Fang as the first charge move that the opponent throws. As we are now debuffed one stage in our defenses, we will be respecting the damage output from this Nidorina. We have built up to 100 energy on our double and will begin firing off these charge moves into the opponent. It will put significant shield pressure and threaten the health of this Nidorina, and as such, they do expend their final shield. We are able to successfully shield the opponent's hardest hitting charge move, that being the Thunderbolt, before the opponent brings back in their Hypno, and we are able to knock out the Hypno with the Body Slam before nearly reaching the back-to-back Wild Charge. How much damage will this Wild Charge do to the Nidorina? It does respectable damage. In this instance, it may have been great for us to have that payback, as payback would have put the Nidorina low enough for our Lickitung to farm down. But here we do overtap, but it's inconsequential because our double is able to throw one final Body Slam and call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. And that's the end of our first set. We actually were able to claim a 4-1. Let's see how our second set goes. We are greeted by the opponent's Haxorus on the lead. This is a terrible lead for us, as Haxorus is running the fast move of counter and will be dealing super effective damage to all of our normal type Pokemon. We pivot into our Vigoroth as the opponent's Haxorus is very nearly at their first charge move, but the opponent counter swaps us, bringing in their Cofagrigus. The Coffin will be firing off its first charge move, that being Psychic, before our Vigoroth is able to throw the Bulldoze. The opponent respects the damage and not at all enthralled by a bait, shielding that Bulldoze from our Vigoroth. This time they do call our bait, which may have been a misplay by me, as the opponent shielded the bait and was able to overfarm by a ton, because they knew that we wouldn't be able to reach another Bulldoze before they were able to farm up a whole bunch of energy. As we will be pivoting back into our Lickitung, Lickitung will be forced to either shield or take this damage from the opponent's Psychic as they do pivot back into their Haxorus. Haxorus, now at the charge move, must respect the damage from our Lickitung, and they will do so by expending their final shield. And at this point, it almost looks like the Haxorus is going for the full farm down, but the opponent realizes they won't be able to achieve that idealistic feat, and instead they will be firing off the back-to-back breaking swipes. Lickitung is now double debuffed in its attack, and at this point, it may have been the smarter play to pivot out into our double and save our energy for later, but it actually works out for us as Haxorus is just so glassy. We were able to get it down to 1 HP, even though we were double debuffed in our Lickitung attack. as the opponent brings in their Charmer. This is a Clefable running Charm, not Fairy Wind, as they do absorb the damage from our first Body Slam, and they make a fantastic catch from our Wild Charge onto their Coffin. That Wild Charge will be knocking out the opponent's Cofagrigus, but now it'll be a race to the next charge move. Double able to reach a Body Slam. Question is, will this be enough to knock out the Clefable? It is not, as Clefable survives on 1 HP. Do they have the charge move? They do, as Clefable is able to clutch up and call game. Well played by the opponent. Excellent catch. That catch clearly won them the game. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have a fantastic lead. We have our Lickitung on the lead against Hypno, and the opponent safe swaps into their Registeel. Registeel will be countered by our Vigoroth, but they're able to reach this first charge move, that being the Focus Blast, and we are able to effectively, successfully shield it before reaching a charge move of our own. We are not wasting any time here with any baits. We will be full sending the Bulldoze, able to knock out the opponent's Registeel. As the opponent brings back in their Hypno, and this is what we were talking about in the intro, where even though the opponent is resisting our fast move of counter, we will be dealing heavy spammy damage with these Body Slams, and the opponent will have to start respecting it, as their Hypno is now very nearly in the red, and they are now in critical health range. As we could have snuck in one more counter there, but I just wanted to get to this next Body Slam, forcing the opponent to shield up. Opponent going for the aggressive farm down, but they will not be able to get it, and now must expend their final shield in order to preserve the energy on their Hypno. Opponent says deal and spends their final shield. Will be greeting our Lickitung, and now I'm traumatized from a previous Focus Blast. Will this be the blast? Yes, it is, and we are able to successfully shield that move, forcing the opponent to bring out their final Pokemon, and it will be the Umbreon. Umbreon immediately met by our Double, and this is going to be a photo finish, as Double does lose this matchup even though it is close. However, those simulations are with Double running Payback. When Double is running Wild Charge, it actually is able to somewhat comfortably win this matchup against the Umbreon. Does the opponent realize it? As we are now at the back-to-back Wild Charges. How much damage will this Wild Charge do? It very nearly knocks out the opponent, but we are not able to get to our next charge move or fire off our charge move, as the opponent for some reason undercharges their foul play, not wanting us to be able to farm them down with our Lickitung. Instead, hoping they can snarl us down, bring some energy into our Lickitung, but that is not a winning strategy for them, as our Lickitung is able to call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping into the next battle, we have a tough lead. This is a really tough lead, and I have to be transparent with you. I'm not entirely sure how to play it. As we are met by Vigoroth on the lead, we counter swap into our own Vigoroth before the opponent greets us with their Cofagrigus. Coffin will be tanking that Bulldoze damage, as Bulldoze is just a terrible move. It gives Vigoroth, I guess, decent coverage, but it is just a horrendous move, as we will be able to reach another Bulldoze, but this will not put much shield pressure on the opponent, as they can comfortably farm us down and bring energy into the matchup that they have next, which will be against the Lickitung. Coffin will be firing off this charge move. It will be the Dark Pulse, as Shadow Ball will obviously be double resisted by our Lickitung. The opponent swaps into their Vigoroth, and we counter swap with our Double. Double will be taking super effective counter damage from the opponent, and at this point, we need to start respecting the damage output from this Vigoroth, meaning that we will be expending our first shield. At this point, we'll be able to outpace the opponent, but this Vigoroth is putting in some serious work with their counters, as they gracefully allow our Body Slam to go through and knock out the opponent's Vigoroth. Opponent brings in their final Pokemon, that being the Shadow Kanto Muck. Muck able to expend its first shield on our Wild Charge before poison jabbing down our Double. Muck will be firing off this first charge move, and we do get baited. It is the Acid Spray, ladies and gentlemen. Get baited, kid. That is just terrible, as this is pretty much a GG from this point. We are debuffed in our defense. The opponent still has an extremely healthy Muck and another Pokemon in the back, and that is just an unwinnable situation for us, as that bait allowed the Muck to call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Hopping straight into the next battle, we have double on the lead against our Lickitung, and we will immediately pivot into our Vigoroth. So in the intro, we said when we're met by another normal type, we will be pivoting into our Vigoroth, and we're met by the opponent's Grimer. Grimer should be respecting this bulldoze. We're going for the bait on the body slam, and we are able to successfully bait the opponent. Will I be expending one shield here to preserve the energy on our Vigoroth? I am. Hopefully, we are able to put significant damage on this Grimer, or we're able to claim the opponent's final shield, as we do successfully claim their final shield. Grimer builds up a ton of energy, gets the farm down onto our Vigoroth, and we bring back in our Lickitung. Lickitung is a very tanky Pokemon. However, it will not be appreciating this Sludge Bomb from the opponent's Grimer, as we are now at 50% health. Grimer reaching another charge move. This will just be the Mud Bomb, but Mud Bomb, having gotten the buff this season, will be doing significant work as our Lickitung is now in critical health range. However, we are at the back-to-back body slams and will be able to fire off this body slam into the opponent's double. Lickitung has done its job at this point, but we want to preserve that Pokemon. It may still have some utility for us, so we immediately pivot out into our double. Double up in the mirror, firing off this body slam, able to outpace the opponent, knocking out the double with its body slam, calling game as the opponent brings in their own Kanto Muck, which may have had some play there, but regardless, double calls game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. We have an awesome lead on the next match with Lickitung against the opponent's Banette. Opponent immediately swaps into their Regirock, and I must be transparent once again. I was not counting here, as the opponent did not build up to the Focus Blast, but we expended a shield anyway, and here I'm thinking, no way would they throw a Focus Blast now. How much does it do? It KOs our Vigoroth. We expend one shield. We don't get switch advantage. We lose all that energy on our Vigoroth, and we're forced to bring in our final Pokemon, that being the double here. Will the opponent bring their Banette back in? They know all three of our Pokemon now, and they do choose to bring it in, as this is a better matchup between double and Lickitung. Opponent will respect our damage, which was the Wild Charge. We full sent the Wild Charge. That may have been a bait, as Banette is an extremely glassy Pokemon, as we will be expending our final shield to defend our double, allowing us to get this Wild Charge, knowing that we will be outpacing the opponent's Ghost-type Pokemon, reaching a third Wild Charge, firing this move off into the opponent. This is another instance where Wild Charge requires a little bit less energy than Payback, so 4 double kicks compared to 5, and that did allow us to outpace that opponent's Banette. As the opponent pivots into their final Pokemon, they're running the double Regis. Banette, double Regi. We take that Zap Cannon onto our Lickitung. Lickitung doesn't have great coverage with its charge moves in this matchup, as both Body Slam and Power Whip are now debuffed, and they will both be dealing resisted damage to this Steel-type Reginald. Regi now in the yellow health, below 50% health, but they will be able to knock us out with this next Focus Blast. Regi knocks out the Lickitung, and from here, it's going to be a race to the next charge move. We get to the Wild Charge. We continue farming for no good reason at all, just a little bit of BM, as the GOAT double knocks out the opponent's Registeel with that next Wild Charge, allowing the GOAT to call game. Well played by the opponent. Thank you for the match. Second set, we have a 3-2. And that's going to be the last battle for our video today. So overall, I had a fantastic time running this triple normal, hey, how are you line today. It was a lot of fun to see how different each of our normal type Pokemon plays into different Pokemon. So each of Double, Vigoroth, and Lickitung all have different coverages, and they all provide different utility. So it's a lot of fun being able to navigate that through the battles today and get some wins along the way. Once again, thank you so much to Top Trainer KR for the team recommendation and as well as for the raid. Had a lot of fun with this line, but that's going to be all for me. Thank you so much for stopping by. Remember to enjoy the small things. Peace.